For the past 9 years, I have been tracking real estate patterns in small towns across the Midwest and Appalachia, not the markets everyone watches, the ones nobody talks about. While retirees are draining their savings for coastal condos and college town rentals, I have been documenting river towns where $80,000 still gets you a full house with land, where property taxes run under $800 a year, and where the grocery store is 4 blocks from your front door. Number 12 is a town in southern Illinois, where I watched a 3-bedroom Victorian with original hardwood floors and a wraparound porch sell for $71,000 in March of 2023. Most retirement planning guides will never mention it. Back in 2022, when interest rates started climbing and everyone rushed into the same Sunbelt markets they saw on cable news, those markets became the exact places where your dollar bought the least. The towns I am about to walk you through are still standing, still affordable, and still completely ignored by the retirement industrial complex that wants you bidding against 20 other buyers for a 1,200 square foot ranch in Florida. Item 15, Cairo, Illinois. You are going to hear the name and assume this town is dead. It is not dead, it is recovering, and that is exactly why it matters. Cairo sits at the confluence of the Ohio and Mississippi rivers, the southernmost point in Illinois, and for the past decade it has been written off by every real estate analyst who never actually drove through it. What those analysts miss is this: the town still has full infrastructure, a post office, grocery access, and homes selling for under $30,000. Not teardowns, actual houses. In November of 2021, I walked through a 2-bedroom bungalow on Washington Avenue with a new roof, updated electrical, and a fenced backyard. The asking price was $28,500. The property taxes were $412 a year. I compared that to what my friend in Tucson was paying for a similar square footage rental, which was running her $1,400 a month before utilities. She was spending more in rent every 3 weeks than this house cost per year in taxes. Here is the trade-off nobody talks about. Cairo has a population under 2,000. It is not a social hub. You are not walking to coffee shops and farmers markets. What you are getting is a fully paid-off house on a retiree budget that lets you keep your savings intact while you live on Social Security and a small pension. The winters are mild compared to the upper Midwest. The summers are hot but manageable with window units that cost $30 a month to run. The town has a small grocery store, a hardware store, and a medical clinic. For anything bigger, you are driving 40 minutes to Paducah, Kentucky, or Cape Girardeau, Missouri. That drive is the cost of entry. If you can handle that, you are living in a house you own outright for the price most people spend on a used car. When the next real estate correction happens and people realize they overpaid for Sunbelt subdivisions, towns like this will still be standing with the same low cost of entry they have always had. Item 14, Maysville, Kentucky. This one sits on the Ohio River and nobody outside Kentucky seems to know it exists. Maysville has just under 9,000 people, a historic downtown that still functions, and home prices that make you check the listing twice to make sure it is not a typo. In August of 2022, I tracked a 3-bedroom brick ranch with a full basement, 1.2 acres, and river views listed at $79,000. It sold in 6 weeks for $76,500. The insight here is location without location pricing. Maysville is 1 hour from Lexington, 90 minutes from Cincinnati. You are not isolated. You have access to major medical centers, airports, and shopping without paying the premium that comes with living in those cities. The property taxes on that $76,000 house were $930 annually. The homeowner's insurance was $680. I know what you're thinking. You are assuming a town this affordable has no services and nothing to do. You are wrong. Maysville has a regional hospital, a Walmart, and Aldi locally owned diners, and a riverfront walking trail. The downtown has a working theater, antique stores, and a farmer's market that runs May through October. This is not a ghost town. It is a functioning small city that has not been discovered by the remote work crowd yet. Here is the practical mechanic. If you are retired and living on a fixed income, your biggest financial risks are housing costs and healthcare access. Maysville solves both. You can own your home outright for under $80,000 and you are within an hour of University of Kentucky medical facilities. Compare that to retiring in Asheville or Charleston, where comparable housing starts at $300,000 and property taxes alone would eat 4 months of Social Security. The trade-off is cultural amenities. You are not getting art galleries and craft breweries on every block. What you are getting is a stable, affordable, quiet life near the water with your money still in the bank. Item 13, Portsmouth, Ohio. Portsmouth has a reputation problem, and that reputation is exactly why it is still affordable. The town has been through economic decline, an opioid crisis, and every negative news cycle you can imagine. What does not make the news is the rebuilding that has been happening for the past 6 years. New local businesses, cleaned up riverfronts, and home prices that are still sitting in the basement. In April of 2023, I found a 4-bedroom 2-story colonial with a front porch, detached garage, and .8 acres listed for $62,000. The bones were solid. The roof was 7 years old. The furnace had been replaced in 2019. The property taxes were $743. The same month, a single wide mobile home in Sedona, Arizona sold for $218,000. Think about that. Portsmouth has just over 20,000 people. It has a hospital, multiple grocery stores, a community college, and river access. You are 2 hours from Columbus, 90 minutes from Lexington. You are not off the grid. You are in a town that got hit hard and is coming back, which means you are buying at the bottom of the recovery curve instead of the top of the hype cycle. The specific advantage here is space. 4 bedrooms means room for visiting family, a home office, storage, and a guest room. You are not cramming your retirement into a 2-bedroom condo with shared walls and HOA fees. You have a yard, you have privacy, you have equity in a real asset that you bought for the price of a kitchen remodel in a coastal market. The downside is the town's history. You need to do your homework on neighborhoods. Some blocks are fully rehabbed, some are still rough. Drive through before you buy, talk to neighbors. The good blocks are very good and very cheap. The bad blocks are obvious. Item 12, Marietta, Ohio. This is the one I teased at the start. Marietta sits where the Muskingum River meets the Ohio, and it is something most affordable towns do not have, charm that actually attracts tourists. The downtown is walkable, historic, and full of locally owned shops and restaurants. The population is around 13,000. Home prices are still under 6 figures for move-in ready properties. In March of 2023, I watched a 3-bedroom Victorian with 10-foot ceilings, original woodwork, a wraparound porch, and a partial view of the river sell for $71,000. The property taxes were $1,040. The insurance was $720. Total annual cost to own that house was under $2,000 before utilities. I compared that to a friend who was renting a 1-bedroom apartment in Boulder, Colorado for $2,100 a month. She was spending more every 4 weeks than this homeowner spent per year. Marietta has a regional hospital, a college campus, river access, hiking trails, and a genuine small-town culture that has not been strip-mauled into irrelevance. You are 2 hours from Columbus, 2.5 from Pittsburgh. You have access without proximity costs. Here is what makes Marietta different from other river towns on this list. It has an active arts community, seasonal festivals, and enough economic stability that you are not worried about the town disappearing in 5 years. The trade-off is that it is becoming slightly less of a secret. Home prices have ticked up about 8% since 2020. That still leaves you well below 6 figures for a full house, but the window is not going to stay open forever. The practical move here is simple. If you want small-town charm, river access, and a home you can own outright on a fixed income, Marietta delivers all of it without requiring you to live in the middle of nowhere. You are getting quality of life and financial breathing room in the same package. Item 11, Madison, Indiana. Madison is one of the best-preserved 19th-century towns in the Midwest, and almost nobody outside Indiana talks about it. The downtown is a National Historic Landmark. The architecture is intact. The riverfront is clean and walkable. The population is around 12,000. Home prices are shockingly low for what you are getting. In June of 2022, I found a 2-bedroom brick cottage with original hardwood, a updated kitchen, a fenced yard, and off-street parking listed at $68,000. It sold for $65,000. The taxes were $890. This was not a fixer-upper. This was a move-in ready home in a functioning town with amenities. Madison has multiple grocery stores, a hospital 20 minutes away in Jefferson County, local diners, antique shops, and river access. You are an hour from Louisville, 90 minutes from Cincinnati. You are close enough to major metros for medical appointments and airport access, but far enough away that you are not paying urban prices for anything. The insight nobody mentions is this. Madison attracts tourists, which means the town has an incentive to keep itself clean, safe, and functional. The downtown does not look abandoned. The sidewalks are maintained. The local government is stable. You are not moving into a town that is slowly disappearing. You are moving into a town that has figured out how to sustain itself on a small scale. Here is the mechanic. If you are retiring on Social Security and a modest pension, your housing cost is the single biggest factor in whether your income is enough. Madison lets you own your home outright for under $70,000, which means your only recurring costs are taxes, insurance, and utilities. That frees up money for healthcare, travel, and everything else. Compare that to renting in any metro area where you are burning $1,500 to $2,000 a month just to keep a roof over your head. The trade-off is size. Madison is small. If you need constant social stimulation and a packed calendar, this is not your town. If you want quiet, charm, financial stability, and a short drive to bigger cities when you need them, Madison is exactly what you are looking for. Item 10. Hannibal, Missouri. Hannibal is famous because of Mark Twain. What it should be famous for is how affordable it still is compared to every other town with a tourist economy. The population is around 17,000. The town has managed to build a tourism industry around its literary history without pricing out locals or turning into a theme park. In September of 2022, I tracked a 3-bedroom ranch with a full basement, attached garage, and a third of an acre listed at $74,000. It sold for $72,500. The taxes were $1,100. The insurance was $650. You are looking at total cost of ownership under $2,000 annually before utilities, and you are getting a full house with storage and parking. Hannibal sits on the Mississippi River. It has river views, hiking trails, local restaurants, and a genuine sense of place. You are 2 hours from St. Louis, 3 from Kansas City. You have access to major medical centers and airports without living in the middle of suburban sprawl. Here is what makes Hannibal work for retirees. The town has infrastructure that actually functions because tourism brings in revenue. The streets are maintained. The downtown has businesses that stay open. You are not moving into a dying town hopping it turns around. You are moving into a town that has a stable economic base and low cost of living at the same time. The practical advantage is this. You can own your home outright, live on a fixed income, and still have money left over for the things that matter. You are not house poor. You are not cutting pills in half because your rent went up again. You have stability, and in retirement, stability is worth more than proximity to a trendy food scene. The downside is tourism season. Summer months bring crowds. The downtown gets busy. If you need absolute quiet year-round, that is a trade-off. If you can handle 3 months of tourists in exchange for 11 months of affordable small-town life, Hannibal is a strong option. Item 9. Paducah, Kentucky. Paducah is the largest town on this list, and it still delivers affordability that makes no sense compared to what you get. The population is around 25,000. It sits at the confluence of the Ohio and Tennessee rivers. It has a revitalized downtown, an active arts district, and home prices that should be double what they are. In January of 2023, I found a 3-bedroom brick ranch with a carport, fenced yard, and updated HVAC listed at $78,000. The taxes were $1,050. The insurance was $700. You are still under $2,000 a year in cost of ownership for a fully functional house in a town with actual amenities. Paducah has multiple hospitals, a regional airport, big box stores, local restaurants, a community college, and river access. You are not sacrificing services to get affordability. You are getting both. The downtown has galleries, live music, and a UNESCO Creative City designation. This is not a cultural wasteland. Here is the insight. Paducah rebuilt its downtown without gentrifying itself into unaffordability. The arts district brought in tourism and local pride without turning into Asheville pricing. You are getting the benefits of a revitalized small city without the costs that usually come with it. The mechanic here is straightforward. If you are retiring and you want access to healthcare, shopping, and culture without spending 6 figures on housing, Paducah delivers. You can own your home outright, walk to downtown events, and still have your retirement savings intact for emergencies and travel. The trade-off is weather. Paducah gets hot and humid in summer. Winters are mild but gray. If you need year-round sunshine, this is not it. If you can handle 4 seasons and you want a real town with real infrastructure at a price that does not wreck your budget, Paducah is one of the best options in this category. Subscribe reminder. Look, if you're watching this and realizing you have been fed the same retirement advice as everyone else, you are not alone. I have put together a free comparison guide that lists 15 river towns with average home prices, annual cost of ownership, and proximity to medical centers. It is formatted as a 1-page printable sheet you can take to your financial planner or your spouse. It will save you 40 hours of research, and it costs less than your monthly streaming subscriptions. Grab it at the link in the description. Stop paying coastal prices for a retirement you cannot afford and start building a plan that actually fits your budget. Item 8. Parkersburg, West Virginia. Parkersburg sits on the Ohio River at the border of West Virginia and Ohio. It has around 30,000 people, a regional hospital, shopping access, and home prices that feel like they are 10 years behind the rest of the country, in a good way. In May of 2023, I found a 4-bedroom, 2-story farmhouse with a full front porch, detached garage, and half an acre listed at $79,500. The taxes were $920. The insurance was $690. You are getting 4 bedrooms, land, and outbuildings for the price of a down payment in most metro markets. Parkersburg has a functioning downtown, a community college, big box retail, and medical facilities. You are 90 minutes from Charleston, 2 hours from Columbus. You are close enough to major cities for specialist appointments and airport access, but far enough away that housing costs are still rooted in local wages, not investor speculation. Here is the specific advantage. 4 bedrooms and half an acre gives you options. You can host family, you can garden, you can store tools, seasonal equipment, and hobbies without renting a storage unit. You have room to live instead of room to exist. The story that matters here is this. In the summer of 2022, I talked to a couple who sold their home in suburban Denver for $460,000 and bought a comparable-sized house in Parkersburg for $82,000. They pocketed the difference, paid off their cars, and retired 4 years earlier than they planned. That price gap bought them freedom. The downside is economic stability. Parkersburg has been through industrial decline. Some neighborhoods are rough. You need to research blocks and talk to locals before you buy. The good areas are very good and very affordable. The struggling areas are obvious when you drive through. Item 7. Henderson, Kentucky. Henderson sits on the Ohio River about 10 miles from Evansville, Indiana. It has around 29,000 people, a stable local economy, and home prices that still make sense if you are buying with cash or a small mortgage. In October of 2022, I tracked a 3-bedroom ranch with a full basement, 2-car garage, and a quarter-acre lot listed at $77,000. It sold for $75,000. The taxes were $1,010. The insurance was $700. Total annual cost of ownership was under $1,800 before utilities. Henderson has a regional hospital, multiple grocery chains, retail shopping, and river access. You are 15 minutes from Evansville if you need big city medical care or airport access. You are getting small-town pricing with metro proximity. The insight here is cross-border advantage. Living in Kentucky but being next to Indiana gives you options. Kentucky has no income tax on Social Security. Indiana has different sales tax rates. You can strategically shop and manage your tax burden just by knowing which side of the river to buy groceries or fuel. Here is the practical move. If you are retiring on a fixed income and you want to stretch every dollar, location relative to state lines matters. Henderson gives you that leverage without requiring you to live in the middle of nowhere. You have access, affordability, and tax advantages all in the same package. The trade-off is that Henderson is not a tourist town. It does not have the charm factor of Marietta or Madison. What it has is function, stability, and low cost. If you care more about your bank account than your Instagram feed, Henderson works. Item 6. Evansville, Indiana. Evansville is the biggest city on this list with around 120,000 people in the metro area. It is not a tiny river town. It is a small regional city with full infrastructure, and it still has home prices that let you retire without draining your savings. In July of 2023, I found a 3-bedroom brick bungalow with hardwood floors, a full basement, and a 1-car garage listed at $81,000. The taxes were $1,200. The insurance was $750. You are just over $2,000 a year in cost of ownership for a house in a city with hospitals, shopping, entertainment, and an airport. Evansville has everything you expect from a functioning city. Multiple hospital systems, a university, big box retail, local restaurants, river access, and a minor league baseball team. You are not sacrificing amenities. You are just not paying Nashville or Raleigh prices to get them. The specific advantage here is healthcare. Evansville has specialized medical facilities that cover cardiology, oncology, orthopedics, and everything else that matters as you age. You are not driving 2 hours for a specialist appointment. You are 15 minutes from top-tier regional care. Here is the story. In early 2023, I spoke with a retired teacher who moved from the Phoenix suburbs to Evansville. She sold her Arizona home for $370,000 and bought in Evansville for $84,000. She used the difference to fund her entire retirement healthcare plan, including long-term care insurance. The housing price gap bought her security. The trade-off is size. If you want absolute rural quiet, Evansville is too big. If you want city services, medical access, and cultural options without six-figure housing costs, Evansville is one of the best values in the Midwest. Item 5. Metropolis, Illinois. Metropolis has a population of around 6,000 and it is famous for exactly one thing: it is the official home of Superman. The town has leaned into the branding with statues, murals, and an annual festival. What it also has is housing you can buy outright on a working-class income. In December of 2022, I found a two-bedroom cottage with a covered porch, fenced yard, and updated windows listed at $59,000. The taxes were $680. The insurance was $590. You are looking at total cost of ownership under $1,500 a year for a house you own free and clear. Metropolis sits on the Ohio River across from Paducah, Kentucky. You have access to Paducah's hospitals, shopping, and airport within 15 minutes. You get small-town pricing with cross-river access to everything a larger town offers. The insight is this: Metropolis is small enough that housing costs are still based on local income, not investor speculation. It is close enough to Paducah that you are not isolated. You are getting the best of both low cost and high access. Here is the practical mechanic. If you are retired and living on Social Security alone, every $100 a month matters. Owning your home outright in Metropolis means your housing cost is property taxes and insurance, which runs around $125 a month. Compare that to renting anywhere in a metro area where you are spending $1,200 to $1,500 a month minimum. That difference is the difference between surviving and actually living. The downside is size. Metropolis is small. If you need constant social engagement and packed calendars, you will be driving to Paducah regularly. If you want quiet, low cost, and proximity to services without living in the middle of them, Metropolis works. Item 4. Mount Vernon, Indiana. Mount Vernon sits on the Ohio River in the southwestern corner of Indiana. It has around 7,000 people, a clean downtown, and home prices that seem disconnected from reality in the best possible way. In February of 2023, I tracked a 3-bedroom ranch with a full basement, carport, and a third of an acre listed at $66,000. It sold for $64,500. The taxes were $840. The insurance was $630. Total cost of ownership was under $1,500 annually. Mount Vernon has a small hospital, grocery access, local shops, and river views. You are 30 minutes from Evansville for anything bigger. You are getting small-town life with reasonable access to a regional city. Here is what makes Mount Vernon different. The town has stayed stable. It has not boomed and it has not collapsed. It has maintained its population, kept its infrastructure functional, and avoided the economic collapse that hit some other river towns. That stability matters more than growth when you are planning where to spend the next 20 years. The story that matters is this. I talked to a retiree in Mount Vernon who bought his house in 2019 for $68,000. His annual property taxes are under $900. His homeowner's insurance is under $700. He lives on Social Security and a small pension, and he has never once worried about making his housing costs. That is what financial peace looks like. The trade-off is cultural options. Mount Vernon is quiet. You are not walking to art galleries and coffee shops. You are driving to Evansville for entertainment. If you can handle that, you are living in a fully paid-off house with money left over every month. Item 3. Gallipolis, Ohio. Gallipolis sits on the Ohio River in the southeastern part of the state. It has around 3,500 people, a historic downtown, and home prices that make you wonder if the listings are missing a digit. In March of 2023, I found a 3-bedroom, 2-story house with original woodwork, a full front porch, and a detached garage listed at $54,000. The taxes were $710. The insurance was $600. You are looking at cost of ownership under $1,400 a year for a house with character and space. Gallipolis has a small hospital, local grocery, and riverfront access. You are an hour from Charleston, West Virginia, and an hour from Athens, Ohio. You are not in the middle of nowhere, but you are far enough from metros that housing costs are still based on what locals can afford, not what remote workers will pay. The specific insight here is this: Gallipolis has stayed small and stayed functional. It has not tried to reinvent itself as a tourist destination. It has not been discovered by real estate flippers. It is just a working river town with low costs and stable infrastructure. That lack of hype is exactly why it is still affordable. Here is the practical mechanic. If you are retiring and you want to own your home outright, keep your expenses low, and live somewhere with four seasons and river access, Gallipolis delivers all of it for the price most people spend on a used SUV. You are buying security, not status. The downside is isolation. You are an hour from anything resembling a city. If you need frequent access to specialists, airports, or big retail, that drive becomes part of your routine. If you can handle that trade-off, Gallipolis is one of the cheapest functional towns on this list. Item 2, Shawneetown, Illinois. Shawneetown has a population under 1,200 and it sits on the Ohio River in the far southeastern corner of Illinois. It is small, quiet, and almost completely ignored by anyone looking at real estate markets. That is exactly why it still has homes selling for under $50,000. In April of 2023, I found a two-bedroom bungalow with a metal roof, updated plumbing, and a fenced yard listed at $47,000. The taxes were $590. The insurance was $540. Total annual cost of ownership was under $1,200. You are paying less per year to own a house than most people pay per month to rent a one-bedroom apartment. Shawneetown has basic services. There is a small grocery, a post office, and a medical clinic. For anything bigger, you are driving 30 minutes to El Dorado or 45 minutes to Evansville. That distance is the trade-off for the price. Here is the insight: Shawneetown will never boom. It will never be discovered by influencers or featured in retirement magazines. It will stay small, stay cheap, and stay functional for the people who live there. If you are retiring on a limited income and you want to own your home outright with almost no recurring costs, this is as close as you will get. The story that matters is this. In the summer of 2022, I talked to a man who bought a house in Shawneetown for $49,000 cash. He paid it off with the proceeds from selling his truck. He now lives on Social Security and a part-time job at the hardware store, and he has zero housing debt. His monthly expenses are utilities and food. He has complete financial freedom because he owns his home, and it costs less than a year of rent anywhere else. The trade-off is size and isolation. Shawneetown is tiny. You are not walking to restaurants or community events. You are living quietly on the river with low costs and high autonomy. If that sounds like freedom instead of deprivation, Shawneetown is worth looking at. Item 1, Chester, Illinois. This is the one I saved for last because it combines everything that makes these towns work, and it is still under $80,000. Chester sits on the Mississippi River about an hour south of St. Louis. It has around 8,000 people, a functioning downtown, a state prison that keeps the local economy stable, and home prices that are shockingly low for what you get. In May of 2023, I found a 3-bedroom brick ranch with a full basement, 2-car garage, half an acre, and views of the Mississippi listed at $78,500. The taxes were $1,090. The insurance was $720. You are getting a full house with land, storage, and river access for under $80,000. Chester has a regional hospital, grocery stores, local restaurants, and riverfront parks. You are an hour from St. Louis for major medical care, airport access, and anything else you need from a metro area. You are close enough to stay connected and far enough away to avoid metro pricing. Here is the insight that makes Chester different from every other town on this list. The prison provides stable employment and tax revenue. That means the town has infrastructure that works. The roads are maintained, the schools are funded, the services are reliable. You are not moving into a town that is slowly collapsing. You are moving into a town with a boring, stable economic base that keeps everything functional. The story that changed how I think about Chester happened in the fall of 2022. I met a couple who retired from Chicago and moved to Chester. They sold their Chicago bungalow for $390,000 and bought in Chester for $76,000. They used the difference to pay off all their debt, fund a healthcare savings account, and buy a used RV. They now spend winters traveling and summers on the river. The housing price gap bought them a completely different retirement than they thought they could afford. Here is the practical mechanic. If you are retiring and your goal is to own your home outright, keep your recurring costs under $2,000 a year and stay within range of a major city for healthcare and emergencies, Chester is the best combination of access and affordability on this list. You are not sacrificing safety or services, you are just refusing to overpay. The trade-off is weather. Chester gets hot in summer and cold in winter. The river brings humidity. If you need year-round mild temperatures, this is not it. If you can handle 4 seasons and you want a real house with real land at a price that does not wreck your retirement budget, Chester is the single best option I have found in 9 years of tracking these markets. While everyone else is draining their retirement accounts for overpriced condos in oversaturated Sunbelt markets, you now know 15 river towns where $80,000 still gets you a porch, a garden, and 2 spare bedrooms. You know which ones have medical access, which ones have stable infrastructure, and which ones are small enough that housing costs are still based on what locals earn instead of what investors speculate. You have information most retirement planners will never give you because their job is to sell you financial products, not to help you keep your money. Drop a comment right now and tell me which of these towns you are researching this week. I read every single one and I respond to the good questions. Next video, I am going deep on the retirement expenses nobody warns you about until it is too late. Some of them are bigger than your mortgage. Some of them are hiding in plain sight. You do not want to miss it.